Hello and welcome to Dr. Akmal Makhdum's YouTube channel. He is a psychiatrist, an author, and a social commentator. Today we're going to be discussing the Black Lives Matter movement and the situation within America. So, Dr. Akmal, what is Black Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter at this particular moment in time is a movement which is um, exactly what it says. It is a movement that is primarily focused on the way Mr. Floyd was murdered in front of people, in spite of people telling the policeman, Chauvin, that you're going to kill him, you're going to be killing him, he's dying, and those 8 minutes 46 seconds that his knee remained on his neck, the murderer, ensured that Mr. Floyd was killed. He started, after protesting, into breathing difficulty, then ultimately remembering his mother when he realized that he is going to be killed, saying, "Mama, Mama," and a 42-year-old man, father of two, saying that. So I think that at this particular moment in time, in this little window of time, this temporal window, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. There are a few black people,
Hmm.
a part of the black community, which they have raised their heads above the parapet and have managed to rise above the glass ceiling. But the main institutional construct and configuration of American society has remained the same. So now that people have started to demand more, so let's look at it in grades. So we were talking about what Black Lives Matter means, and we've just explained that it means that at this particular moment in time, George Floyd was murdered in plain eyesight, being recorded, videoed, another three policemen protecting him, allowing him to kill that black man who hadn't done really anything. And so that innocent man, even if he had done anything, he should not have been killed, but he was brutally and ruthlessly murdered in public,
Broad
plain eyesight.
daylight. Hmm.
And it took a long time. It was worse than a hanging, worse than a lynching. It was 8 minutes 46 seconds of slow asphyxiation. Now, at this particular moment in time, lots of white people are horrified, and they all say that this is not us. We are not ruthless murderers. We do not stand for it. So this kind of murder is not allowed. That's fine. But the point is that if it is only that, then that point is made. And then what? Now you already see a backlash. So there appears to be now a categorization that those who are calling to defund the police, to reform it at its core, are being called far left. And of course, being called a liberal and a far left or a socialist is like being called, evil in the United States of America. So what's happening now is that the space that has been gained by Black Lives Matter, with the support of the white people who do not want to see themselves in the mirror and see a part of that police officer in them, but some of that ground is now being retaken when the President of the United States of America says that we have to take the cities back. When there isn't, massive violence happening at this time. when Seattle has no violence and the president says, take your city back. So that reflects that he's echoing the thoughts of his voters, which are saying, we have given too much ground. We have to take that ground back a little. So I think that it is possibly a slightly longer flash in the pan, which has lived for a little longer time. If people are expecting that it will bring about a revolution in the United States of America, a revolution in terms of the criminal justice system, revolution in terms of policing, revolution in terms of black rights, I am slightly more realistic about it. I do not think that is going to happen, because that requires a fundamental transformation in thinking. There isn't a fundamental transformation in thinking
Yeah, but
by institutions.
But don't you think that's the start of it, though? Because so many people are protesting. You have some states that have said that they're going to now not put so much money into the police, and they're going to look at the alternative methods that are there when you defund the police and replace them. But obviously, they said it's a long process and it's going to take time.
Yes, in the United States of America, there have been so many such starts. The murder of Martin Luther King, the murder of Malcolm X, various other murders, the 12-year-old Tamir Rice, and so on the list. You can, from extremely famous people which brought about the US, this is not the first time they had to call in the armed forces. After Martin Luther King Jr.'s death and murder, America was on fire. This is nothing.
Okay, so and you also said that this is about George Floyd right now, one person, but when you're looking at the news, when you're looking at what the Black Lives Matter movement is saying, they're naming everyone whose life has been taken in a very barbaric, illegal manner, which then is then covered up, and no police officers ever brought to justice. Breonna Taylor, the nurse who was shot in her bed. Like you said, the list goes on. So, don't you think it's gone beyond just one person?
Not really. I personally believe that at this moment, the white psyche is having a catharsis, an expunging of guilt. So, I may sound rather pessimistic and rather sort of, not too enthused about this, because maybe I'm older and wiser, and I've seen since 60s and 70s all the trials and tribulations in the United States of America of the minority populations and the larger population. I believe that in the United States of America now, people are gradually expunging themselves of the guilt of this murder that occurred. Now, this is the beauty of the American system, that it has a clean slate scenario every 4 years. So you have a president who, in the garb of war against drugs, brings about upheaval in the whole Latin America. And countries are toppled and popular regimes are turned on their head and civil wars are created and drugs are brought in and out through surreptitious means. And then you have an expunging system where after 4 years or 8 years, that person goes away and there's a new start. And all the guilt and all the wrongdoings are then wiped clean. And then you see a president who comes in and attacks Iraq and creates a lot of mayhem in retaliation for terrorist killing 3,000 Americans. He kills maybe 2 million people worldwide, most of them innocent. And, the whole regions are set ablaze. And after a little while, he then gets cleansed and a new person comes in. And this new person comes in and brings about another hope. And the presidency of, the Obama presidency comes with this promise, and that creates a huge new havoc in the Middle East and everywhere else. And then that is expunged and cleansed, and now comes the Trump presidency. So I do not think that the United States of America has any long-term thought process in which it deals with its own faults and its own, it doesn't bear its crosses for more than 4 years. And I do not think that there is any chance of United States of America changing its habit, because US is in a habit of a self-revival, so it's like that Catholic Church that absolves you every 4 years of all your previous sins. You go there during the election campaign, you talk of all the guilt all the sins that you've committed, and once that catharsis occurs, and then the whole thing starts again. The only thing that, and I commend the Jewish community in that, the only consistent thing that they have focused throughout their history since World War II is the Holocaust. Although the US was not part of the Holocaust in terms of creating it, but the Jewish community in the United States of America have sustained that. There has been no forgiveness and no forgetness in the scenario of the Holocaust. So from 1945 to date, the thing that has consistently have found a living space, and all credit to the Jewish community of the world and the United States of America specifically, that they've kept that alive. Black minority hasn't been able to do that, of 400 years of exploitation, 400 years of oppression, and constantly being lynched, although the ways and means are different. So in my personal view, unless there is an informed and a consistent platform with the political and financial support behind it, and an organized system which keeps Black Lives Matter and brings it into the forefront of the political and planning discussion, it is not going to work. Because the thing is, we've seen all across the world, there has been support for Black Lives Matter. But when they've tried to topple this particular statue of a slaver lord in one of the cities in England, what happened? That those who are against it, those who are either racist or do not sympathize or currently feel that they should not be speaking, have used that as their cause célèbre in saying, oh, we cannot do this is illegal, and when
ignorant.
you start to do these things in this illegality. So illegality and breaches of the law are now being brought in, and the far left and these things are being brought in slowly.
Yeah, but that's convenient. But when the police officer was on someone's neck, literally taking the breath away from someone till they died, isn't that illegal and against the law?
Well, very few people have called it a deliberate premeditated murder. He is not being charged with deliberate premeditated murder. He is actually on,
Second degree, I think.
second degree.
Okay, so there's this one
It's not
gentleman.
first degree murder. Second degree is, it was unintentional.
Right. So there is this gentleman who's quite prominent in America, and he's saying that it's time for the Black community to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think how do they make people remember? Because whenever anyone brings up slavery and the damage that it's done, I feel like people, like a lot of people, even in the media, they become very dismissive about it. Like, oh, just get over it now. Things have improved lots, and of comparatively, in some, like you said, in some degrees, it has improved, but then it hasn't because things are the value of life is not the same. You have all these, massacres in schools.
No, but the point is that that is where racism comes in. Those who minimize racism are racists. I think we have to be very clear about it. When people say, oh, when he called you the N-word, or when he called you Becky or Blackie, or whatever the people say, oh, he didn't mean it that way. He was very upset at that way. I mean, I give you one example. I was working as a psychiatrist in the National Health Service, and a person came in and said something racist, and I obviously wasn't going to take it, and I told him to leave, and that I would not see him and put up with insults regardless. And when I informed one of my managers, and what she said was, oh, he was very upset because his son wasn't feeling too well. Okay, so that was his justification for being racist towards me. And then when I spoke with one of my medical professional organizations, and the chap who was there on the other line said, oh, well, doctor, you should realize that he was father of a very distressed son. So basically these two comments came, and I realized that the manager was a racist, and this person sitting in my medical protection was a racist too. So, my supporters were supposed to be, who were supposed to be my, people whom I could rely on, were racist too. And they somehow justified that racism that was implemented upon me. Now, when you talk of racism, we see out of 30 doctors who have died in England of COVID-19, 28 are from ethnic minorities. And the Guardian lead on this was that it is not genetics, it is institutional racism. So what I'm saying is that this is a far deeper issue, and it has not been resolved. President Kennedy used armed forces of the United States of America to force a black woman join a university in South of America where the white governor was refusing to allow her to come in. When there was no integration in buses, and he had to force it by armed forces. Now there may be integration, but what kind of integration? There are black communities and white communities. A black person is seen in the white community. There are people who follow him and they shoot him dead. So there is a far more deep, and the thing is that let's come to this particular point, that unless the black community deals with it, there is only one successful model, and that is the Jewish model of Holocaust, of keeping the persecution of a nation, of a group of people alive in the living memory of humanity. That is the only model available. And I say that until that model is followed, until that degree of mobilization and thinking and coherence is brought in, I think it is once again going to be a little flash in the pan and is going to end.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any comments or any thoughts on this topic, please do leave a comment below. If you like the video, like, and we will catch you next time. Thank you.